In the 4th year of marriage, I found that Gavin had a woman hiding upstairs. That woman was so arrogant that she came to my house to provoke me, saying that there is no right or wrong in love, and those who are not loved should be eliminated. After we fell out, Gavin also ridiculed me, saying that compared with her, I was like a cup of boiled water, bland and tasteless, and he had lost interest long ago. My youth for 11 years became a big joke. Later, we broke up, but Gavin began to beg again, asking if he could start over. On the 4th anniversary of marriage, Gavin gave me a Porsche 911. Unexpectedly, in the evening of the next day, I was rear-ended in the underground garage of the community. A young girl said, "Sorry, I just got my driver's license, I'm not good at driving, I'll pay for the damage." Seeing her sincere attitude and simple dress, I didn't want to care. "It's okay, just a little scratch on the paint, no need to pay." The girl blinked and took out her mobile phone. "I'm so sorry. Let's add WeChat. I'll treat you to dinner later to make amends." We were close and I could smell the fragrance of jasmine. I felt like I had smelled it somewhere before. I was a little slow to take out my phone and add her. After returning home, I sat on the sofa and sent a message to Gavin about the situation and asked him for the insurance company's contact information. Gavin didn't reply for a long time. It was the girl who sent me a message first. "Sister, so you are from Liozhou University. What a coincidence. You and your husband went from school uniforms to wedding dresses. It's so romantic. But you've been together for so long, won't you get tired of each other?" My moments were all open and I didn't care if she saw it. But what she said crossed the line. I didn't reply to her and clicked on her moments. The first one was a refined selfie with the caption, "Nothing special," posted 10 minutes ago. I always felt that it was meant to be. Scrolling down, I found that she was not in financial difficulty. Yesterday she posted a rare leather Hermes that I liked. I thought it was expensive at the time and didn't let Gavin buy it. While waiting for Gavin to reply, I fell asleep on the sofa. When I woke up, there was the sound of water in the bathroom, and Gavin's suit jacket was also making noises. I took out his cell phone, and there were 3 missed calls from the same number. The other party called for the 4th time, and I knocked on the bathroom door. "Honey, your cell phone has been ringing several times, probably something urgent." Gavin opened the door, stroked his wet hair, and smiled. "Next time, just answer it directly, you know the password." His trustful look made me feel sweet, and I handed him the phone. "You should answer it yourself, in case it's something about the company, I won't delay it." Gavin rubbed my head with gentle eyes. My wife is so considerate. After I left, Gavin turned up the sound of the water and answered the phone. "What's wrong, darling, didn't we just meet?" The other party hummed a few times and acted like a spoiled child. "I miss you, I want to be with you every moment, I can't sleep without you to coax me to sleep." Gavin smiled and coaxed in a gentle voice, "Darling, I miss you too, can I take you on a trip after I'm done with this period of time?" The other party should be quiet. We agreed not to lie. Then he smiled slyly. "Your wife's car is so beautiful, I want to play with it too, and I want to have fun with you in her car." Gavin's throat rolled and his voice was hoarse. "Darling, stop it. You were already very reckless when you bumped into Sarah today. Let's be quiet for a while, okay?" When I went to bed at night, Gavin told me that the paint on my car was imported paint, and the 4S shop had to transfer the paint, and it would take 2 or 3 days to repair it. I was busy with work, so I left it all to him. When the car was repaired, I found that there was a smell in the car that didn't belong to me. After sitting in it, the rearview mirror was at the wrong angle and the seat height was adjusted. The worst thing was that there was an earring in the gap between the seats. The earring was exaggerated in shape and the color was dopamine, and I immediately thought of someone. I took a deep breath, opened my phone, and flipped through the girl's circle of friends. She was wearing this pair of earrings in the top selfie. My heart tightened and I flipped down with shaking hands. Looking closely, I found that the ties, brooches, and watches I gave to Gavin were in her ambiguous photos showing off her affection. They were all showing off in secret. The perfume smell and the circle of friends that day, now all have the answer. I went upstairs in a daze, and the house was dark. I called Gavin, but the call didn't go through. I went into his study. I almost collapsed again after 3 failed attempts to unlock the computer. Gavin's password used to be my birthday plus the initials of my name, but now the password has changed just like his heart. I sat on the sofa, my mind was a mess. Gavin came back late at night, reeking of alcohol. Seeing him staggering at the door for a few times, I softened my heart and helped him sit on the sofa. He hugged me. "Darling, after this project, let's go to Iceland to see the northern lights, okay?" I pushed him but he didn't move, and asked in a trembling voice, "Gavin, do you know who I am?" Gavin hugged me tighter, rubbed his head against me, and said coquettishly, "You are my wife, the wife I finally married." I burst into tears. Gavin was drunk and soon fell asleep on the side. I took the phone out of his pocket and entered the password, but failed. I pinched his fingers and tried the fingerprints one by one. After the third one, the unlock was successful. I thought I was ready, but when I saw Gavin also note, "Darling," to Sophie, my stomach suddenly cramped. I was trying to hold back my nausea and flipping through the logs. Sophie sent me a cool photo and asked if it looked good. Gavin said to flirt with her again and wait until we go upstairs and don't beg for mercy. She also asked who was better between her and Gavin's wife. Gavin said it must be her, and said his wife was like a piece of wood in bed. Seeing this, Gavin's image collapsed, and his heart felt like a big hole, and it hurt so much that it was numb. I looked at their chats and found out that they had been together since March last year. Before my birthday in May, Gavin rented a room upstairs to facilitate their affair. On our 4th anniversary, I got a Porsche, and she got an Hermes, and she even rear-ended me on purpose to provoke me. I was touched that Gavin went downstairs to bring flowers, but he picked them from the 99 flowers that Sophie had given him to coax her. Every time Gavin went on a business trip, she followed him. Stayed in the most expensive hotels and went to high-end restaurants. Gavin worked during the day and made love with her at night. After work, he stayed a few more days to accompany her to check in at scenic spots and restaurants. At the end of last year, she wanted to see the snow in Chongbai Mountain, and Gavin left me who was sick and flew to Jilin. The most disgusting thing is that he took her to the temple with the best fortune for marriage, and the red fortune stick said, "Gavin will always love Sophie." I stared at the photo. What am I? What is my 11 years of youth? I went back to the bedroom, collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling with lifeless eyes. In the second year of high school, a sudden 6.2 magnitude earthquake broke the tranquility of the campus. The teaching building shook violently, and the students fled out in panic. Gavin had already run halfway, but when he found that I didn't keep up, he turned around and rushed to the 6th floor without hesitation, risking the aftershock. When he found me injured, at that moment, I seemed to see the light. After surviving the disaster, we sat on the ground exhausted. I couldn't help asking him, "Why did you run back? Aren't you afraid?" Gavin panted heavily, holding his still shaking calves, and smiled warmly at me. "I'm afraid, but I'm more afraid of losing you." Since then, Gavin seemed to have changed into a different person. He put away his beloved basketball and began to ask me questions while scratching his head with the test paper. In just 1 year, he went from the last to the top 200 in the grade. Finally, I went to Liuzhou University as I wished, and Gavin was also admitted to Liuzhou University in the same city as me. On the day of the freshman party, he sneaked into the playground of my school, held a guitar, and sang a confession song for me, and we were together in this way. The next 4 years were our sweetest and happiest time. Gavin gave me enough love and tolerance, and spoiled me a little bit. Once I had a misunderstanding with Gavin, and I hung up the phone angrily. Unexpectedly, I saw Gavin, who was supposed to be out of town, appear downstairs of my dormitory at night. He hugged me tenderly and patiently explained to me, "How can we let our darling spend the night with such an emotion?" After graduation, I resolutely married Gavin. At that time, he was at the bottom of his career and was very poor. Our wedding was simple, with a pair of plain rings and a few tables of relatives and friends, and the cheapest wedding dress was rented. When Gavin put the ring on my hand, his eyes were full of guilt and heartache. "Sarah, you have been wronged. I will definitely make it up to you in the future." I hugged him and smiled. "I don't care about those, I just want you to love me forever." Gavin swore to me firmly, "Gavin will love Sarah forever, until the moment of death." But now, the vows I made are still ringing in my ears, and the person next to me has already changed his mind. The next day, Gavin got up early and made a hearty breakfast. Seeing that I was standing in the living room with a bad face, he quickly hugged me to sit at the table and apologized. "Don't be angry, darling, I will definitely not drink so much next time." I didn't move my chopsticks, stared at his t-shirt and asked, "When did you like this kind of clothes?" Gavin looked at his exaggerated t-shirt and smiled. "Last time I saw James wearing it energetically, so I asked him to buy me one too, to change my taste." Liar. James is his assistant, usually he is either formal or plaid shirt, which is not his style at all. I clenched my fists and stared at Gavin's eyes, trying to find guilt and guilty conscience, but there was nothing. He was so frank that I felt like what I saw yesterday was a nightmare, but the pain in my palms told me that it was all real. I was about to ask him when my cell phone rang. The nanny said that Grandma suddenly fainted and convulsed, and I didn't know what to do. I panicked, and Gavin took the phone to handle it. On the way to the hospital, he comforted me while using his connections to contact the doctor. Grandma's condition was critical, but because Gavin arranged it well, the operation was timely. The operation lasted until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and Gavin went to buy milk and bread in the middle. I stared at the door of the operating room and shook my head, not wanting to eat. Gavin stuffed the bread in my hand and said, "If you don't eat it, how are you going to take care of Grandma when she comes out?" I took it with red eyes and ate mechanically, and my eyes were suddenly filled with tears. Grandma is my only relative. Will she Gavin hugged me tightly and patted my back. Grandma will definitely live 100 years. Don't be afraid. The operation ended at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Grandma was too old to be hospitalized for observation. I was relieved. Gavin went to handle the hospitalization procedures, and I went home to pack my toiletries. When I came back, Gavin was gone. Grandma woke up and touched my face to comfort me. Don't cry, Nan, I'm old, and there will always be such a day. I hugged Grandma and choked up. Grandma, don't talk nonsense, you will live 100 years, I can't leave you. Gavin is a good boy, with him accompanying you, Grandma, rest assured, you will be fine. When Grandma mentioned Gavin, I felt sad. Not long after, Grandma fell asleep. I went out of the ward to get some fresh air and happened to run into Gavin making a phone call. It's a critical time for the company now. My love for her is gone, but there are conflicts of interest. If you wait a little longer, I will divorce you. Okay, don't be angry, darling. I'll go back to accompany you later. She will definitely take care of Grandma tonight. We have plenty of time. I stood there, my heart sank. So that's it. I looked at Gavin and turned away. 3 months later, Grandma recovered and was discharged from the hospital. I had just settled Grandma down when I was blocked by Sophie in the garage. She opened my car door without thinking and asked me innocently, Sister, I lost an earring. Did you see it? The car was small and her perfume made me want to vomit. I said coldly, please get out. That earring was given by my boyfriend. I like it very much. What's wrong with looking for it? After that, she rummaged around in my car, messed up my things, and muttered. Strange, it was here that day, why is it gone? At this moment, a shrill horn sounded in the garage. Sophie was startled, turned her head to look at me with a frosty face, and then smiled. Don't be angry, sister. If you get wrinkles from anger, no one will want you. I took a deep breath, suppressed my anger and asked, don't you have any sense of shame? Sophie stopped laughing and sneered, life is short. I don't set so many rules for myself. I'm happy. Gavin and I are in love. Why can't we be together? You knew Gavin earlier than me. What's there to be proud of? There is no right or wrong in love. Those who are not loved should be eliminated. I didn't feel any pain when my nails dug into my flesh. I stared at her and gritted my teeth and said, no matter how nice you say, you are still a mistress. You are not protected by the law and have no right to shout in front of me. It's not your turn to point fingers at my marriage with Gavin. Sophie looked at me with contempt and said disdainfully, do you think Gavin is reluctant to divorce you? He doesn't love you anymore. What's the point of you clinging to him? His heart is not with you. Sister, you might as well leave early and keep some dignity. Sophie's provocation broke the last layer of window paper between me and Gavin. I packed the dashcam recordings and gave them to Gavin, leaving the word divorce. In less than 20 minutes, Gavin came home. Seeing me packing my luggage, he pressed my suitcase. What are you doing? I didn't look up, folding clothes. Divorce, moving. I don't agree. Gavin refused without hesitation. I looked at him expressionlessly. I'm informing you, not asking for your opinion. Seeing my firm attitude, Gavin softened his tone. I was wrong about Sophie, can you forgive me? I promised to handle it well, can you trust me again? I was unmoved and walked out with the box. Gavin blocked the door in one step, grabbed my box, and his face was gloomy. Sarah, think about it, if you leave this door today, I will pick Sophie up right after you, and it will be useless for you to beg me then. I pulled the suitcase hard, but it didn't move. My pent-up anger exploded. Gavin, listen carefully. I don't want the suitcase anymore. I don't want you either. After we parted unhappily that day, Gavin didn't look for me, but the people around him annoyed me. His friends sent me messages to persuade me. Gavin is in the world of fame and fortune, and he is bound to be tempted. If he doesn't have Sophie, he has others. He is just playing around, and he cares about you the most. After so many years, don't get a divorce. His mother ridiculed me. You have been married to my son for 4 years, and you don't even have a child. You still have the nerve to make a fuss? The man is cheating outside because you can't win your husband's heart. Who can you blame? She didn't know that I got pregnant in the first year of my marriage to Gavin. At that time, I hadn't gone to the hospital for a checkup. We had a car accident in the mountains. There was no signal due to heavy rain for several days. Gavin was seriously injured and unconscious. I was anxious and scared. I forced my legs to walk a kilometer before I found help. Gavin was saved, but the child was gone. At that time, his mother had just had a heart bypass surgery, so we kept it a secret. Sophie was also not quiet. She was always in front of me, showing off her necklace or diamond ring, showing off her sweetness with Gavin every day. I was not angry at all, and even told her that the bald picture was distorted. Sophie was so angry that she attacked my age and appearance. I calmly replied to her. You are young, but you will not be young forever. If you are always so angry, you will get wrinkles. Gavin did not show up all the time, trying to deal with it calmly, and I did not make a fuss. I found out the details of his property and asked a lawyer to draft a contract. When I was ready, I went to his office to block him. I will definitely divorce you. If you don't agree, I will use ruthless methods. Gavin didn't take it seriously. Sarah, don't make trouble. As long as I don't cooperate, you can't get a divorce. I know your company is raising funds. If I expose the black material and your relationship with Sophie to your rival at this time. Gavin's face was ugly. Sarah, we are husband and wife after all. Do you have to force me? You also put in a lot of effort. I glanced at him. Remember my contribution and sign the divorce quickly, divide the property, and part ways amicably. Gavin's company is half my credit. Seeing that he had a hard time, I gave up the offer from a big company and started a business with him. He worked on the technology, while I worked on the sales, attracting customers and finding suppliers. I always kept yogurt with hangover medicine in my bag and drank for him. I went to the raw material factory to save costs and compared prices to win the cooperation. Later, the company grew bigger and I returned to my family. Who would have thought that this would end up like this? I didn't want to waste time and pushed the divorce agreement in front of him. Do you want the property to be divided in half, or the company to lose tens of millions of financing and delay the listing? It's your choice. Gavin's veins popped. Isn't it enough to make trouble for so many days? Must it be like this? I put the pen in his hand. Do you want to sign it? Gavin took the pen with a dark face, but didn't sign it immediately. He looked at the agreement. He signed it half a day later. Before handing it to me, he stared at me for a long time and said sarcastically, "Actually, I've wanted to divorce for a long time. Sophie is young, beautiful and interesting. I feel alive when I'm with her. Compared to her, you're like boiled water, bland and tasteless. I've lost interest in you. It's better to divorce, so I don't have to act, it's tiring." I took the agreement and put it in my bag, and splashed water on his face. Gavin, you're a jerk. The 1-month cooling off period passed in a flash. The day Gavin and I went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle the divorce procedures, Sophie actually came with us. She was dressed up in a lot of jewels, raised her chin high, and looked at me provocatively. Passers-by and staff looked at me sideways and whispered, "Are mistresses so arrogant these days? You're so young and you're so self-righteous when you're a mistress. It really ruins your worldview." I sat there straight, expressionless, with no intention of fighting back. Sophie was young and impatient. When she heard these words, her face turned red with anger, her eyes glared, her hands on her hips, and she wanted to argue with passers-by about her true love innocence. Gavin frowned, his face full of impatience, and whispered, "Sophie, be quiet." When the staff stamped the steel stamp and handed the divorce certificate to me, the big stone in my heart finally fell. The corners of my mouth rose slightly, and my eyebrows were full of joy. Gavin saw this look, and his face instantly turned gloomy. He gritted his teeth and said, "Sarah, it's useless for you to regret now." I raised my eyebrows, and the smile on the corner of my mouth became brighter. I smiled and said, "I only regret not getting divorced earlier." When I left, I looked Sophie up and down, frowned slightly, shook my head, and said with disdain, "Your greatest asset is youth. If you were dressed like this when you hooked up with Gavin, he would definitely look down on you." Sophie was so angry that her eyes turned red. She stomped her feet on the ground and shouted loudly, "So what? Sarah, you still lost. When my brother and I get married, I will definitely give you an invitation." After saying that, she was still not satisfied. She proudly touched her still flat belly and boasted, "By the way, I will also invite you to the baby's full moon wine." I sneered, walked towards the sports car without looking back, stepped on the accelerator, and left only a puff of exhaust gas for her. After the divorce, I decisively sold part of the real estate under my name and opened my own studio in full swing. Site selection, decoration, recruitment, promotion, and finding partners, I was very busy every day. I would just tie my hair up, wipe my face, stuff a bun into my mouth, and go straight to the company, devoting myself to work. When Sophie came to me angrily, my studio buddies and I were opening champagne to celebrate the successful completion of the first big project. "Sarah, you bitch, what is your intention in sending those things to my mentor and parents?" I picked my ears and said slowly, "Why are you so loud? Do you want to be glorious?" Sophie was choked by my words. She saw her studio buddies on the second floor stretching their necks to watch the show. She was so angry that she took a few deep breaths and cursed in a low voice, "If you have the guts, come at me. You played dirty tricks behind my back and involved my parents. Do you want to force them to death?" After the divorce, I paid someone to investigate Sophie's family background and academic situation. After learning that Sophie's parents were running an education and training institution, I printed out her chat records with Gavin and compiled them into a book that night, and sent them to her parents together with the video and audio in the driving recorder. After learning that Sophie had neglected her studies since she followed Gavin and her tutor was already dissatisfied with her, she immediately sent a copy to her tutor via flash. Liuzhou University is a century-old prestigious school that values students' conduct the most. Sophie's incident caused a sensation on campus. The school expelled her from the school, and all her years of hard work were ruined in one day. Because of Sophie's situation, the training institution of Sophie's parents has lost its students and is now facing bankruptcy. Sue's father was so angry that he fell ill and Sue's mother cried all day at home and dared not show her face. Even if Sophie didn't come to me, I knew all these things clearly. I looked at the furious Sophie in front of me and smiled. Didn't you tell me that you don't care about these worldly rules and regulations? Why are you making such a fuss now? Is it because no one agrees with your theory that true love is innocent? Now you think about being a filial daughter. Why didn't you think about your parents' face when you interfered with other people's feelings and became a mistress? Since you did it, it is natural that you have to suffer the consequences. Sophie was so irritated by my words that she rushed over to fight with me. I looked at her bulging belly and dodged to the side. If you are smart, keep your tail between your legs and keep a low profile, protect the baby in your belly, and hold on to Gavin. Otherwise, you will have nothing. Hearing this, Sophie calmed down. She glared at me fiercely and gritted her teeth and said, Sarah, you won't be proud for too long. I will soon become Mrs. Gu, and I will be 100 times more glorious than you. I smiled and replied, then I'll wait and see. It's autumn in Liuzhou City, the autumn wind is rustling, and the fallen leaves are flying everywhere. I just ordered the first cup of milk tea in autumn for my studio partner, and I received a call from Serena. Sarah. Great news. I just got the latest news that Gavin was anonymously reported by someone for tax evasion, and the company has been closed down now. I was very calm. I know. Ah? I did it. Ah? I gave Sophie a big gift, so I can't treat Gavin badly, I have to give him a surprise. I explained to Serena softly. Not long after the divorce, I anonymously reported Gavin for tax evasion. I accidentally saw it when I was looking for evidence of his affair with Sophie. He used a lot of tricks to raise funds, and I would definitely fail if I reported him. Serena applauded at first, then became worried. Will the real estate and money under your name be affected? I answered calmly. Of course not. After signing the divorce agreement, I urged him to go through the change procedures. His affairs have nothing to do with me. Serena was full of admiration on the other end of the phone. It has to be you. This is the Sarah I know. When I like him, I can sacrifice everything for him and praise him to the sky. When I don't love him, I can also make him fall into the quagmire and never recover. I don't want Gavin to look back, I want him to have no way out. After Serena knew that I reported Gavin's company, she was like a radar, always paying attention to Gavin and Sophie's movements, for fear of missing out on the good show. Gavin's company's accounts are not clean, and there will be trouble once it is checked. Pay taxes, late payment fees and fines, and financing will be lost. Gavin was seriously injured. It was difficult for the company to operate normally, let alone go public. And because of the shortage of funds, the production line was broken. He could not collect the final payment and had to pay a huge compensation. Gavin had to sell his house and car to pay off his debts, and went bankrupt overnight. Sophie was the most devastated. She thought she could become a rich wife and enjoy wealth and glory by squeezing me out, but she didn't expect Gavin to go bankrupt suddenly. The dream wedding and big diamond ring were gone, and she didn't even have a place to stay. Sophie couldn't accept moving from a large flat to a rental house, and she quarreled and broke up with Gavin frequently. Then, Sophie decisively aborted the baby in her belly and took away the rest of Gavin's family assets. When Gavin heard from her again, Sophie had already climbed into the bed of a boss in his 50s. How could Gavin swallow this breath? And he went to Sophie in anger. Sophie lost her gentleness and consideration for Gavin, who was penniless. If you don't abort, do you give birth to me? Can you afford to raise me? Why should I wait to die on your tree at such a young age? They were so sweet before, but now it's so ugly to tear each other apart. Gavin's mother knew that Sophie had an abortion and was with someone else, and she took several quick-acting heart-saving pills to recover. When Serena described it to me vividly, I sighed. After all, true love is not worth a few pieces of silver. Then I stopped focusing on them. When it snowed in Liuzhou City, I saw Gavin, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, downstairs in the community. I hadn't seen him for half a year. He didn't have the spirit and vigor he used to have. He lost a lot of weight, his back was hunched, his eyes were like dead water, and his face was full of fatigue. Sarah, can we talk? I was holding the hot sugar-roasted chestnuts, which were steaming, and I wanted to go upstairs to eat them quickly. I looked at the watch. 3 minutes to finish. My cold attitude made Gavin uncomfortable. He stood up and hurried over. Sophie and I broke up. Can we start over? I frowned and took 2 steps back. If you want to talk about this, 3 minutes is unnecessary. Gavin's hands froze in midair. Do you hate me so much? I made a mistake, but after so many years of relationship, can't you give me another chance? Seeing that I didn't say anything, Gavin grabbed my hand anxiously. I was just angry when I divorced. I have always loved you. I was wrong, really wrong. Can we start over? I shook his hand off in disgust, my tone was very cold. That's enough, Gavin, stop pretending. Changing your heart is changing your heart, and any reason is just an excuse. The hurt you caused me cannot be undone by just saying you were wrong. How dare you ask me to give you another chance? Gavin was speechless. Sarah, I lost my patience, don't bother me anymore. It was obvious that Gavin didn't listen to me. The next morning, I saw him downstairs again. He stuffed the still hot breakfast bag into my hand as if nothing had happened. You used to love their soup dumplings the most. I ran to buy some. Eat them while they're hot. I glanced at the packaging and recognized it was from the steamed bun shop in the north of the city. I threw it in the trash can in front of him and said lightly, I've always liked Xiaolong Bao. When I just graduated, I was poor and could only afford one portion, so I accommodated your taste. Gavin pursed his lips, embarrassed and cramped. Sorry, I'll go buy it again now. No need, there's no point in you doing this. But Gavin still didn't give up. It was almost time to get off work on Friday, and it was raining heavily outside. Gavin ran to the company to give me an umbrella. I frowned at Gavin, who was soaked. I have a car, and I drive in the underground garage. The wind and rain won't fall on me, so I don't need your umbrella. After being repeatedly rejected by me, Gavin was depressed for a few days. Knowing that I had a cold, he knocked on my door with medicine and soup he made himself. Seeing the man open the door, Gavin's face changed drastically, and his tone was full of dissatisfaction and hostility. Who are you? Why are you at Sarah's house? I heard the noise and came out of the bedroom. When I saw Gavin and Ryan bump into each other, I was stunned for a moment and asked coldly, what are you doing here? Gavin held the door frame tightly with his hands, stared at me, and asked in a trembling voice, Sarah, who is he? Thinking of Gavin's recent entanglement, the words, he is my partner, on my lips became ambiguous. He has entered the house, who else do you think he can be? After saying that, I deliberately put my arm around Ryan's arm and smiled brightly at Gavin. I can't just fall down here once and then shut up and be lonely for the rest of my life. What you said before was not entirely wrong. New people, new tricks, new experiences. Gavin left in a daze. After closing the door, I quickly let go of Ryan's arm. I'm sorry, I really don't want Gavin to bother me anymore and use you as a shield. Please forgive me. Ryan smiled gently, it's okay. After that day, Gavin disappeared from my sight. I heard about him again a year later in the Liuzhou University alumni group. The group messages were refreshed quickly, and I had to look through them for a long time to figure out what was going on. It turned out that Gavin came to Sophie's wedding uninvited and gave Sophie's B ultrasound report as a gift to the groom, ruining Sophie's marriage that she had finally got. Sophie saw that the happiness she had obtained was gone again, and she went crazy and stabbed Gavin several times with a knife. Gavin was seriously injured and was sent to the hospital for rescue for a day and a night before he was saved. Sophie's parents were so anxious that their hair turned white overnight, and they knelt in front of Gavin's bed and begged him to spare his life. But the first thing Gavin said when he woke up was that Sophie must go to jail, and there was no room for negotiation. Sophie was finally detained for intentional injury, and a long and painful prison life was waiting for her. Someone in the group at me and asked me what I thought. I said nothing, calmly put my phone aside, and looked up at the sky. The stars are very bright tonight, I'm sure it will be a sunny day tomorrow.